originally Rizzoli asked me to do a Beastie Boys book. They wanted to do one, and this is before they had their book. They just, the publisher there really was a fan of the Beastie Boys. And I told them I couldn't do that. It was just like a money grab or something. I just said, you know, my books have to have something more socially interesting or something like that. So I added Run-DMC. I said if I could do it with Run-DMC and call it maybe the Extra Strength Posse, which Chuck D used to do all the time. He called all the Rush bands the Extra Strength Posse, or Together Forever. And they liked the other name better, but then in the end I like this name better, so we just went with this. And I think it's like, you know, the title Together Forever really, to me, is the political statement of the book. It's just people working together. And those two bands worked together from the very beginning. And, you know, in this fucking chaotic time of what's going on in politics and in the world, I think it's important to promote, you know, some racial unity and that people actually used to get along and people didn't have to be assholes to each other. And really that's what that signifies. And since I've been looking at you the whole time, I'll ask you, do you have a question?
Growing up, man, I've always seen all your photography. It's very iconic for me personally. I guess there's that moment, and I think I probably know the answer, but is there ever a time when you're there, because it's only with the benefit of hindsight that you end up realizing sort of how important it was? Was there ever a sense at any point in time, anywhere, where you just felt like this was going to be important, or was it just more or less you were there, right place, right time?
Well, I made myself be there, and I wanted to be there, and I knew it was important at the moment, but I did not have any idea that it would live on beyond the next few months of that moment. Like when you were making pictures back then, it was like you're making pictures because you want them to be in a magazine and you want more people to find out about it, and that's what the goal was at the time, and that's all there was to it, because you didn't know it was going to live any longer than those few months or that next few magazines, and when this is a unique situation, you know, the Beastie Boys and Run-DMC, because the first thing, I mean, I've been shooting skateboarding since I was 14 and working really hard to get photos in Skateboarder magazine, and also struggling because I was a little kid and they had people trying to make a living. You know, I was still living at home. You know, but once I worked with the Beastie Boys and Run-DMC, it's like all of a sudden, and I'd gone through all the punk rock stuff, you know, and shot a lot of bands and whatever, and you never really made any money or anything like that, and that was never a goal. And no one really, you had to fight to get publicity and you had to fight to get your stuff in, and still then people just shut you out all the time. They didn't really care, you know. When Black Flag, you know, I was just up here, there was a riot on Sunset Strip when DOA and Black Flag were playing, just, you know, steps away from here. And, you know, I was just hanging out at those shows, but sometimes I did bring my camera, and that's when Dez was still singing, that's when the real riots were going on and stuff. This was popular and people wanted these photos. And yeah, we were shooting pictures at these shows that police were coming to and everything, and you know, and trying to, you know, I was sending pictures to Time Magazine, to Newsweek, to all the outlets at the time. There was no internet, obviously, and people just really didn't care. They were just ignoring it. You know, they didn't believe that we were getting beaten up by police and stuff like that. But when I started shooting, or when I was working, not right in the beginning, but eventually, pretty quickly, when I was working with Run-DMC and the Beastie Boys, things started blowing up really quickly, and I started shooting more film than ever, because I never shot a lot of film. I always just kind of just did what I needed to do. You know, you have to pay for your own processing. You're just a kid and not making much money doing anything. And so, but every shot I would take had a place to go back then, you know, and that's, I mean, and even then though, I mean, like almost every session I ever made with the groups, which is not that many compared to what photographers do, is in this book. And you can see it. And there's a lot of good stuff that people haven't seen in this book that I'm excited about, you know, and I like seeing the shots, even though I don't like promoting drug use and stuff, but seeing Joey with a joint and stuff like that, and he's a reverend now, it's kind of funny, and I think it's cool, and you know, we couldn't publicize those pictures then. And he's constantly smoking throughout the book, but he's either doing that or talking, because that's why they call him Run, right? Because he runs his mouth. That makes a lot of sense. The reverend runs his mouth, right? Probably more than anybody in society. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir, you
Okay,
did.
what's your question?
I'm still thinking of mine.
Oh, well, you got to come. You have all this pressure. I got pressure here. I'm sweating. You can think of one right now.
I mean, for me,
you know it's coming. You know it's coming next, and you're after.
and I even scooted up a seat.
Yeah.
This to myself.
There's an empty seat over here if someone wants to sit down there, by the way.
I guess I've always just wondered, looking at your books and all, especially with the music of, you know, you're covering bands on both coasts, and says, how the hell were you? How are you in the right place at the right time? Seemingly all the time.
Well, my parents got divorced when I moved out to California. My dad was still there, so I would go back and forth in between. I would be in New Jersey for the summers, right next to New York City in Fort Lee, And that's how I was on both coasts.
Okay.
And I was just very interested in the culture and what was going on. And so I made myself be there. And these things were inspiring me. And since I was 14 working at Skateboarder magazine, that was kind of an outlet for me. And so even though all the music stuff wasn't in there yet, I was pushing and eventually did get Black Flag into Action Now magazine and did get some people into some of these magazines. But it was, that's how it happened, because I was just traveling. In the summers I was here and in the winter there. And so I was very comfortable, but also uncomfortable in both places. I never fit in completely, so that kind of made me, do what I was doing, and also being able to be in both places. But I was, very driven. I mean, my pictures are as great as they are because of the people that are in them. They inspired me to do the stuff. I mean, I had the eye, but if they weren't great, I wouldn't be making great photos of them. That's what it comes down to in the end. And there's plenty of, most of the time I didn't bring my camera to shows. I was just going to shows. I didn't want to have a camera on my neck and be a nerd like this guy. I'm just giving me a hard time. But yeah, that's how it happened. I mean, pretty much. And then I was at UCLA in like 82 to 85, and I just took whatever I wanted to take because I was having a rough time there, and so I never really. I didn't graduate. I didn't get enough credits. I don't know where I would have been. I didn't really pay attention to that. I was just trying to enhance my, ability to think about different things, right? Yeah. And but then Def Jam started blowing up, and and I was helping the Beastie Boys. And as you'll read, you got to read the introduction in this book. I wrote 5,000 words. I never wrote that much since I was in UCLA, probably about anything, But I sat down, seeing the Beastie Boys do their talk. Did you guys hear about that talk that they did when the book came out? And I came home one night, and after seeing on Instagram too, I get a lot of good feedback on that. Most people are pretty positive, and they like the stories. So after seeing the Beastie Boys do their thing, I came home and over a week just wrote this story from beginning to end. And so a lot of the pictures, if you read the introduction, it'll tell you where the pictures came from and how they happened. If you're just looking at the pictures of the Beastie Boys live at one of the first shows and you see a little blob in the background, you might not know, but that's Madonna, right? And I tell you in the book that she wouldn't pose with us for a picture of them, with them. And so we just went out in the audience and took a picture, and she's in the background. So now when you open that page, you'll know. If you didn't know already, it's obvious. But yeah, so a lot of the stories are told there, and I don't know if I answered your question or not.
You did.
Okay, great.
More.
Okay.
Speaking of UCLA, I just came from UCLA. I work at the hospital right now.
Oh, wow.
I came just to see you, man.
Oh, that's
I'm a big
nice.
fan of your photographs. It's been iconic, speaking of, the Def Jam era, that's like my area where I kind of grew up, gravitating to hip hop,
Yeah.
Before the internet scene, the only thing that kind of paced like Run-DMC and Beastie Boys was like your photographs, because there was no internet back then.
Yeah.
So I was like captivated with all the the pictures. That was just awesome, man. Big fan of you and Beastie Boys and Run-DMC and Def Jam.
That's cool. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so I noticed that on all your shots, you love to use that fish lens,
Fish lens. I don't use that on all my shots, but I learned that. I started using that, and I'm very particular about that. I get, I try and use it in an artful way, not just as a gimmick. People use it as a novelty, and I think that most people use it don't know how to use it, and they all, I did use it a lot because I grew up on that. Remember I was 14 and I got my fisheye. I had a screw-on one when I was 14, and when I was 15, I got a real one. And because of skateboarding is where I cut my teeth, right? And I learned how to take great photos from Craig Stecyk and Warren Bolster. They taught me. They and National Geographic and Sports Illustrated is where I learned, and Surfer magazine all taught me, this is what beautiful photography is. And then, the Renaissance painters too. I just say you have to have you want to capture things. Really, I hate that word capture, but you want to portray things in a way that will be interesting to other people. I just work hard at it, and just to make them look good. I don't use it all. I use it when it's necessary. I don't overuse it, and that's important. Again, I don't use it as a novelty. I use it to show more of the background and show more of the environment without distorting the people. Sometimes I might do it on purpose, but if you look, there's a lot of fisheye photos in this book, but a lot of them you can't tell that it is, and it's not. Again, it's. I don't use it as a gimmick. I try, unless it's the Beastie Boys jumping in the air and we're just playing around and it's straight up. But a lot of times you'll see the fisheye in there, like the pictures, by the, that we took. On the Beastie Boys' first trip to California, I took them up to Corral Beach. We just took a drive around. They wanted me to take them out to the Galleria because of Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And I said, I'm not going to the Valley. I don't do that. That's not how we do it. So we drove up and down the coast. They were only in town for a day, but this picture is on with a fisheye, right?
Yes.
And it's like, it's not gimmicky. It's just a beautiful photograph. You know what I'm saying? And so you just have to learn to use it right, and you can use it a lot, and it could really be helpful. But I use all kinds of different lenses, but I like a wide lens because that's how we see. We have eyes on both sides of our face, and we have a peripheral vision, and so I think that the camera matches that. And also that was just the lens that I grew up with. So that's why I used it a lot.
Thinking of all the places you've been, the people you've seen, the experiences you've had, have you ever thought of making a movie of your life?
A movie of my life? I don't. People have asked me to do documentaries every once in a while. When people interview me for one thing, and they'll see that I go way too far with all my stories, they'll say, "Oh, well, why don't we do a documentary on you?" But I don't. I don't. I'm making my own movie, but it's not about me. It's about the culture, and it's about the ideas and what happened during that time. And I think that'll be interesting. I think, I don't know. I don't know. It's a little egomaniacal. I mean, maybe one day it'll happen, but I don't think that. And people have asked me, but I just feel funny about that. I just, and I like people to recognize the pictures. I don't need them to recognize me. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? But that's cool. Thanks.
If you had seen the Beastie Boys thing, which you did, so I'm glad that you saw that. That was the book tour they did.
Oh, yeah. That was great.
That was amazing.
That was great. I went to the first show and the last show.
Yeah.
And they were both really great, and they were different. And it inspired me. That was a really great thing for them to do. And I hear, not that you asked me, but they videotaped it. It was going to be like for Netflix or something like, but now they're making it into a full-blown documentary, and I heard it's amazing. And I think they got about 20 pictures in their last count. So, but you guys got an advanced peek in this book, anyways.
You still keep in touch with a lot of people that you shot.
I'm friends with almost everyone that I shot. And people, when I shoot them, they're usually my friends even beforehand or during. It might seem weird or crazy, but I'm friends with most of these people, and that's just kind of how it works. That's why it's so good. I mean, a couple people, like I'm working on this movie, and there's 2 people I have in mind right now that I'm trying to get to interview for my movie because they're in the Fuck You Heroes book, and the tentative title of the movie I'm making is called The Fuck You Heroes. It's going to be good. But it's, I'm just doing it slowly when we have people in town. When I'm in the same place as the guy who films it with me. But yeah, everyone is easy to get except for these 2 guys that happen to be in my book that I happen to photograph that aren't good friends. And yeah. But
you go still out and see live music and shoot?
Pretty rarely.
Okay.
Pretty rarely. I'm very, very particular. Like, I used to go out to shows here all the time, and I hated seeing bad bands. And I also just didn't like a lot of bands. I just thought they would be up on stage and just sound like shit. They were horrible. And it was just like, who wants to go out? And back then there was all cigarette smoke everywhere, and you want to just go home, But yeah, like I went to a show the other night, and I just felt so uncomfortable there, just because the whole scene, even though there was no smoke in there, but it was a great, great band, and it was really an old band that was just kind of reuniting the makeup. And Ian Savonius, if any of you ever get a chance to see him, he's a little younger than me, but he's still old, and we're all old now, but he still gets up there. Like, he's an incredible performer. The makeup is an incredible band, and they're so photogenic, and he's like a genius besides all that. So it's it was cool.
Yeah, they're coming here soon.
Oh yeah, you gotta see them. Yeah, they're fucking great. Yeah. They were really. How are you doing? What's your name?
Charles.
Okay, Charles.
Thank you for coming. 2 questions.
Yeah.
What would you say is your most magical or memorable moment in shooting, running, and Beastie Boys? And who inspired you? Like, what photographers inspired you in your formative years, would you say?
Yeah, I think I'll answer that one. The photographers that inspired me, Craig Stecyk was one of the main people who inspired me, but also, like I said, just the National Geographic photographers, because, back then there weren't many places to see photography that was really good, but that was the place. I mean, you could really see beautiful work, and that was really inspiring to me. And, and Sports Illustrated. I had a subscription to Sports Illustrated, Warren Bolster, I was 14, and I told the story before, they didn't know how young I was when they first published my photos. And then I met him at Skater Cross in Reseda. They had a grand opening there in 1976 or 77. And he gave me my first 3 rolls of film for free. Like, he gave me 3 rolls of Kodachrome, and he just, he just stood back and I didn't know I heard you were young. I didn't know you were this young, And, but he taught me a lot. He would write letters sometimes, because I didn't understand. So, I took photography 1 at Paul Revere when it was a junior high school, and a great place to skate. And, I got a D in photography. But you know, it's because I didn't do the assignments, and I was published less than 9 months later. You know, but I learned a lot of the basics in that class, and you know, I think people just need to learn how to use their equipment, and if you have the eye, then it'll come out. As long as you know how to use your equipment, and you don't need good equipment, you don't need anything special. I don't know how people use all these things with all the knobs on them and all that stuff, and just too much. I have a shutter speed, an aperture, and focus, and that's it. And I wish someone would make a digital camera that only did that, because I just get blown. You know, I want to design a camera for one of these companies. I'd really like to do it for Pentax. See, I still use a Pentax K1000, which is like the most popular SLR camera, you know, film camera ever made, because it was, students bought it. It's a $100 camera. You know, you can still get them on eBay, and I still use that, you know, but I don't shoot that much anymore because I'm not as inspired. And as relative to one of the questions the guy asked me before, you can imagine I've seen Black Flag play on Sunset Strip. I've seen the Bad Brains play at CBGB's and in a club. I've seen them, you know, I've seen a lot of great bands. And quite honestly, they were really special. We didn't know how special they were now, but 30 years later, you're like, who has even come close to them? Not a lot of people. So it's like, do I want to go out? And no, I'd rather just, you know, read or do something at home or hang out with my kid or do whatever I got to do than, you know, go see. And the first question was something about a magical moment.
What's your most memorable or magical moment shooting Run-DMC?
Well, the most magical moment with Run-DMC I mentioned in the book, and I wasn't shooting them. I didn't have my camera that night. So do you want me to tell you that story? Rather than when I shot them? Because I mean, hanging out in Hollis with them, the first time I went in Hollis and we hung out for like 2 days, that was pretty great. That was just, we were in the neighborhood, I met the Hollis crew, and just, you know, and everyone just walked around the neighborhood, and they just told me all the sights and everything that was going on, and you could see it in the photos. You could tell that we're becoming family, you know, we're becoming good friends then. It was before everyone had, you know, big man, even though Russell was managing them, he was a friend too, you know, but that was really pretty great. And, but the most magical moment of them was when I saw them at the Oakland Coliseum. And they just invited me to get on the plane. I don't even know how I got a ticket. I don't remember how I got on that plane with them, but back then it was a lot easier to fly. And we went up to the Oakland Coliseum, which was like, you know, a huge basketball arena in 1986, I guess. And every single person from the front row to the, I mean, you know, the top row was singing every lyric the whole night. And I was just standing there without a camera, just watching the whole thing, and it was great. You know, sometimes the camera gets in your way. Sometimes you feel like you need it in between you and the audience, and the subject, because you want to be able to tell the story to other people. But other times you just, you know, you don't have anything. You could, I mean, you feel bad because you're missing moments that are incredible, and you're like, oh, I wish I could have had this, you know. But then other times you say, well, I'm just digging it right now, so this is a good moment in life, you know. And the Beastie Boys, those guys, I also say in the book, like, especially in the early days, they just used to make me cry all the time from laughter. They were just so fucking funny all the time and always joking around and always fucking around. But they knew me from skateboarding a little bit, and they knew me because I had shot big punk rock bands before them. So in the early days, they had some respect for me. So they would do whatever I asked them to do, and whatever ideas I had, they would follow, and we would do it. And we did a lot of, you know, we made a lot of good photos together, as you could see. And even later in the years, you could see people were more lackadaisical, but even like the Check Your Head era, I mean, we spent a whole day. I came out here for Thanksgiving, and we just met up at Tower Records after I heard the Check Your Head tapes. And, you know, and we just, you know, went all over town. And I brought them down to Santa Monica, the beach down by, you know, Arthur Lake's house, you know, down on Sorrento Beach. There's a pool that we skated in the 70s there, right? But I knew the parking lot, and I knew it was across from that wall. And I just brought them on a tour of where I grew up because I wasn't living here anymore. And we just took great pictures everywhere because, you know, we were good friends. So that was a good day. But I think, you know, the Madonna tour, when they were out here for those 3 days, that was pretty fucking magical because we were just fucking around the whole time. They were just, and again, I tell the story really good in the book. It was just, to me, I hope it comes across. I don't know if I wrote it well enough, but, you know, I took them down to KXLU and to Malibu and, you know, and by Arthur Lake's pool and stuff like that, you know, which some of the skate people would know what that means, you know, but we just parked there, but we walked across the street and took those cool photos. And, yeah, you know, those guys are just, there's a lot of good times. And, you know, and like I said, I even end it in the book, you know, I still, until Adam just moved out to California, but until last year, he was still living in New York. And I'm hoping that he's coming back again. But we play softball together, you know, every weekend in the summer.
He's in my neighborhood, yeah.
Oh, he's in your neighborhood now in Pasadena?
Yeah, we run into each other.
Oh, that's funny. You tell him that we miss him.
from
But,
Pasadena.
yeah, I was hoping he was going to come here tonight. But I think he's in New Jersey now. Mike's in Paris. So if any of you guys are waiting for them to sign books, you could leave now.
Is there something specific? Is there another situation that you didn't have your camera for that you're like, I wish I had the camera for
There's a lot of times when I ran out of film when good stuff was going on, or there was a show, where I learned how to load my camera properly, because after that night I would never not check my camera being loaded again. When Iggy Pop got up on stage with the Rockettes at this club called Reyes in 1979 in New York City, and was like pretty much naked the whole time, and I'm snapping photos away, and he's like, and the Rockettes are playing, and David Bowie's behind me, and what's the name from Thin Lizzy is up on stage too, and Johnny Thunders is on stage too, and I'm like snapping photos, and nothing went through the camera, and then finally I realized that I got like one shot with Phil, Lynna, and Johnny Thunders and Iggy, I think all in the same photo, and the Rockettes. I mean, it was just like some club scene. I was just a kid. I was in high school. They were like big adults to me, but they were probably in their 20s. But I got one shot. It's in the Fuck You 2 book, but it's nowhere else. And but yeah, it happens.
Do you see a connection between when you were shooting like earlier bands like Black Flag, those early years, Minor Threat, and then you go and shoot like Run-DMC when they're growing up, Beastie Boys, Public Enemy? Did you see a connection, like just the whole DIY-ness of both different scenes of the hip-hop scene?
I'll show you my shirt that I'm wearing.
And the hardcore punk scene at the time?
See, it's Minor Threat.
I have that shirt and I was going to wear it.
What was I going to say is, I mean, the thing is, Run-DMC and Beastie Boys, not the Beastie Boys in the beginning, but when they started getting big, I mean, it was kind of obvious that stuff was going to catch on, where the other stuff really didn't until after it was dead, pretty much. I mean, catch on in the mainstream, right? I always wanted everyone to love Black Flag. I didn't need them to be a little tiny act. I mean, I didn't need them playing the form either. But I wanted people to love everything that I was shooting, and that's why I was shooting it, to turn hip hop was black kids' version of punk rock, and I've said that many times, and and I can't say that it kind of was DIY, and there was even connections to skateboarding with hip hop. I remember skateboarding in the early days. There was a lot of drug money involved, and hip hop in the early days was a lot of drug money involved, and people were laundering money just to do those things. They were becoming clean by going into those things. And that's an interesting aside, but also it was just the attitude. Of course, the attitude is the same, and that's why I was attracted to it. And that rebellious attitude is what I was always attracted to, and I always until we live in a perfect world, people just need to fuck shit up as much as they could to make it a perfect world. And so that's where I feel like that was kind of equal then. Once a lot of success came to it, with a lot of people, once you see money or money comes to in your situation, I'm not saying with these groups necessarily, but it changes people's motivation, But early on, Beastie Boys and Run-DMC, people were doing it for the love. And obviously that's all people were doing with skateboarding and with punk rock. It was for the love. All that other success later was just some icing. I like this idea of making everyone ask a question. It's like, if you're all here and I don't have to do the whole thing. What's up, Jim?
Hi, Glenn.
There you go. Jim Muir in the house, Red Dog. Another person who could sign the Dogtown book. But he might be leaving early, so he's got a show to go to. He still goes to shows a lot. The guy loves music. So does Jeff Ho, though. But I think Jeff is going to stay. Rather than force everyone else to ask a question, does anyone in this row want to ask a question? Okay, this guy.
Throughout your body of work, do you have a favorite photo?
No. I don't have a favorite photo. There's photos I like different times that really stand out. I like the Black Flag shot at the Cuckoo's Nest with Henry Rollins, I like, and Greg Ginn and Chuck Chukowski all in the same shot.
Is that the one where Greg's flailing?
They all look like they're insane.
That's
they're all
one of my
insane.
favorites.
It's a great shot, and I really like that photo. And Tony Alva, the dog bowl comes to mind, but there's some Jay Adams photos that come to mind. There's a lot of photos, that I don't have a favorite at any one given time. There's Fugazi photos, because I have such a close connection to them that really, that stoke me. I mean, I like, I just didn't do this as a photographer or as a documentarian. That's not what I did. I did this because I loved it, and luckily I've been able to survive off of, the books and the prints and just other things that I do, and even, produced a record at one point, and I did different things, not that pays you much, but I'm just saying, I've been able to survive off this stuff. I don't know how I do it, but I just end up doing it, and it works out. And but I love what I did, and so that's why I think it speaks to other people too. They can see that I'm not just here, documenting every moment and just happen to be there at the right place at the right time. I wanted to be there. I loved what was going on. People were inspiring me. I had to inspire other people.
Do you have a favorite show that you went to?
I don't know. That's a tough one.
Too many, huh?
Yeah, there was a lot of good shows. There's a lot of good shows. I mean, Yeah, I mean, you know, Black Flag shows were always my favorite shows, but I mean, I seen Bad Brain shows and Minor Threat shows at 930 Club, you know, and I'm forgetting some shows. You know, my first concert I ever went to in my life was at the Forum someone took me to.
Oh, wow.
And it was the Jackson 5 and Sly and the Family Stone for an African benefit.
Wow.
And that was the first concert I ever went to. And so I've seen some good shit.
How old were you?
I was probably 10, you know, and I went and saw that. And then I think a year later, my mom took me to see Elton John on the Yellow Brick Road tour. That was pretty good. And then, you know, Benny and the Jets. I want to see that. I saw that book here. It looks like it'd probably be interesting. Is there any other questions in this row? This guy.
How'd you go about producing the Suicidal record?
That's a good question. Because of this guy, Jim Muir was like an older brother to me in a way. I mean, on the banks at Kenter, and when we would go to skate spots, I was a kid, and he looked out for me. He was just a good guy, you know, and he still is. He's one of the best people in skateboarding, really. And I met Mike, his brother, at Santa Monica College, and I never really knew Mike before. And we were both at Santa Monica College together, and I probably already did my first album cover with The Adolescents. It was my first cover, and I was friends with Black Flag, and I had a lot of connections in the punk world. And Mike gave me his demo, and I'm like, I love this stuff. I really love this. This is great. And it's like, because, you know, we grew up on Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix and Ted Nugent, as embarrassing as that sounds now. You know, but only because Ted is such an asshole. But the music was great back then. But Suicidal had this like heavy metal thread through it that I really liked, and I thought Mike is a brilliant lyricist. He's amazing. So I liked what he did. Everyone in town, unless you were from Venice, everyone hated them because they caused so much trouble and stuff like that. But I really liked them, and I had the connection with Jim. And I thought, this is like my responsibility. It was like, it's almost like a family thing. And to me, it was like Dogtown on wax. And you know, like we were good. Me and Mike were best friends back then, pretty much. And I just said, you know, do you want to do this? And I could maybe, you know, I'll try and get you a record deal. And I think Lisa Fancher from Frontier Records would do it. And you know, she stuck her neck out for a band that really people didn't want to fuck with. And for me too, because we were good friends. And it ended up working out great for everybody.
Amazing.
Yeah. It was a fun album. It stands up pretty good, I think, still. Absolutely. Great lyrics, man. Great. And great music. It's a good record.
I got a question.
Now the older brother asked the question.
I keep hearing Black Flag, and you know we have both had a lot of experience with them, and Black Flag Riot going on for 3 hours on the right here, back and forth.
Well, I was looking out the window up top.
Yeah, you were up top. I was out here on the street. Yeah. But you know, there's if you're an older fan, there's the age-old battle between who's your favorite singer, Ron Reyes or Keith Morris. I mean, do you have a favorite between those two?
Between those two, I wouldn't say that either of them are my favorite singer. I think every singer brought something new to the table, and I thought they were all good. I think that Henry, as much as old people want to hate on Henry was the best singer they had. I think he was he did what they had to do, but Keith, no one could sing Nervous Breakdown except for Keith, in my opinion, and make it sound good. And songs on that first EP, and Keith is amazing. But Dez was there during the era when you and I saw them probably the most, when they were playing clubs and the Hideaway and the Whiskey and the Starwood, when the Police stuff really started coming down hard. And that's like when, you know, that's when their reputation really got built, was when Dez was the singer. But we all know that Dez, he almost never had a voice. He would always lose his voice. He was always very hoarse. But the few records he made that Geza X produced, and you get that, you know, those old demo records that they made with Dez singing, I mean, he was great too. So I think everyone brought something to the table, but I really do think that Henry was fantastic, and just the power and the force that he brought, being the fan that he was and coming in, you know, I think, you know, everyone had their moment, and it worked great for all of them. I like, you know, the guy who's a skater is singing now. I wouldn't say that he's a singer for Black Flag. I'd say that he's just doing a cover band with Greg or whatever it is, and he's a great skater and probably a good guy too, but I don't consider him one of the singers of the band. He just, you know,
He's a good guy.
I believe that, and I met him actually, and he is a very good guy, but I just don't see him as one of the singers. And some people like argue on the, you know, with me about that, say, oh, well, what about him? You only said there's 4 singers, or there's 5. Well, to me, there's only 4.
I would say more relative, like to the early days before the shit blew up, because those were the first 2 guys when the original energy.
I never saw Keith sing in Black Flag. I saw Ron sing in Black Flag, and I didn't take pictures. I was at the church, and it was so dark. Even if I had a camera, I couldn't have taken pictures there. Any questions in the back there? Should I just start signing books? Is that what we want to do? Okay, she said yes. We just want to start signing books. This guy's got a question. Yeah.
So you said technically you're still shooting when you shoot infrequently. It's still with Pentax. You've never made the digital jump or anything like that.
No.
Has anything changed technically as far as the book publishing, or has that stayed basically the same as well?
Well, I used to publish all my own books, and in the beginning of publishing books, it was still a lot of film involved, very little digital stuff going on. And the truth is that with the digital technology, you have old negatives that you thought when you looked at proof sheets didn't look like much. And now when I look at them again, I'm like, wow. Like even in the Dogtown book, there's at least 20 images that I didn't have 20 years ago that I was able to put in here now. Not only because it's old and it looks, you look at it with a different lens or a different eye, and but the new technology does help you bring things out of your negatives that maybe you didn't see but that were there before. And I think digital photography is great for most people, because most people don't know how to take pictures, and you don't want them to ruin the environment by using all this film all the time. But I mean, it's kind of gets part of the throwaway culture, but again, it's only a digital camera, so you're not destroying the environment while you're doing it. And I hate it that everyone is photographing now and every moment is captured and all that, and it just, it's like, enjoy the moment. Like I said, how much I enjoy it sometimes when I don't have a camera. But yeah, I think that the iPhones are really good too. I think that, and I think now that they got this iPhone 11 Pro where you have a wide angle, like it's more how I'm going to try that. I'm looking forward to trying that. But, for real art, and I really, it might sound pretentious, but I do look at my work as art, and I think that, I do it on film. I could take a good photograph or make a good photograph, with a digital camera or even with an iPhone too, and I do it sometimes, but it's embarrassing for me to hold up a phone and take a picture. And yeah, when it's real, I do it on, with film. Tri-X or whatever film's available at the time. I trust the old Pentax K1000. I still use it. When I'm doing this movie I'm working on, I always shoot film stills of everyone that I'm doing the interviews with now, and it's fun. I mean, yeah, the digital stuff too. Every day it's just getting better and better. I mean, you could just now they have a depth of field in there and stuff, so people can look more photographic, and you don't have to go in there and Photoshop and make it look like that. So it's an interesting thing. It's I can't hate on it. It would be stupid to do that. Like I said, it's good for most people, but I grew up a certain way, so this is the way I make my art. Okay, is there any other questions, or we should start signing books? Oh, there's a couple more. Okay, okay, let me get this guy in the back.
It seemed like you hung out a lot with the bands that you photographed, and I'm just interested in, like you just mentioned, the throwaway culture today, where everyone feels like they have access. Your connection with the band was kind of special. What's the difference between like taking a good photograph? Is it like situation or connection, or do you need both?
Well, part of the reason I stopped taking a lot of pictures of bands and stuff is because I remember I was making my book Fuck You Too, and the Wu-Tang Clan's first record just came out, or the single had come out, and I was really impressed with it. I liked that song Method Man, and I thought he'd be great to put in my book Fuck You Too, which is like 1993 or 4 I was getting it together. And I remember trying to get a photo session with him, and most of it, like Chuck D and the Beasties and Run-DMC and all these guys are all pretty friendly, with me, and I was friends with them and stuff. And when we wanted to do a photo session, you just call them up, or they'd call me up or whatever, and but I had to reach out to a manager, and then he didn't show up twice. I'm like, fuck this. That's just some rock star shit to me. And I just, it didn't have the intimacy. It didn't have the personal thing to it. And I just let someone else photograph that stuff. That's not the way I do it. I have a personal connection to how I do it, and that's, that's how it's done. I mean, if I meet someone now and they inspire me, or someone looks interesting, and and they could connect to you, then maybe I would make photos with them. But yeah, and plus today everyone could take pictures, so people have a different relationship to photography. Back then, I mean, Jim will tell you, any of the old guys say, when someone was taking pictures, and even some guys, I was just 14 or 15, they'd come by my house, I didn't drive it, and pick me up to go take photos. It's it was a big deal to have someone take pictures. And it still is sometimes a little bit, but back then, ask these guys, I mean, it was, and especially if someone could take a good picture, and maybe even, get him in the magazine or something, it was you had a connection, and not that many people could do it. That's why I got the opportunity to be in some of the situations I was in too, because I was able to do it well. I mean, hanging with these guys, if I didn't do it well, I would not be allowed to hang out. That's for sure. That's what I think. Am I right? I wasn't that nice.
Yeah, you got to produce for sure.
That's right. I always was. I always was.
You lived through so many like amazing eras. Are you a collector of do you have like a lot of mementos from each one? Did you save stuff?
I have some stuff. Back in the 70s, I used to whenever it was a new thing and friends would get their signature model board, I would try and get one of those. And I still have some of those. I have some of them, I got about 15 or 20. I remember getting one of the first Alba skates. It was really heavy, made out of oak at the Dog Bowl. He gave it to me. I still have that. But I skated a lot of them too. I didn't realize how I was there. But I got a multicolor Z-Flex from Jay Adams. There was 8 of them made. I'm sure I have the only one of that. That was the first time they made them. That I still have it. I've been offered a lot of money for that. Yeah. And but yeah, I have some pretty cool stuff. But I don't collect and go and buy stuff and do all that stuff. I don't like. Yeah, I think if you had. I mean, I don't know. I collected baseball cards when I was a kid. I mean, I guess you have. You do. But I think the whole eBay culture and just collecting and hoarding stuff is kind of crazy. I don't know. I mean, I guess people don't have. Maybe those people don't have kids and they have got to spend their money on something. I don't know.
Do you have a favorite venue like Fenders or 930 Club, CBs, like to see those shows, or was there anything? Obviously, they're all very special places, but
CBGB's had really good sound. That had really good sound, and it was I would always be right in the front or on the stage, but a lot of times right in front taking pictures. I remember at Basie's Hall when Black Flag played. I don't even have any of my photos of that show, but I mean, the cops pulled me off by my camera. They pulled my camera and dragged me off, the stage there and something. So I have memories of particular places, but I don't remember any venue. The Whiskey was great. It was a little high for
sure.
And the Starwood though was a lot of stuff happened at the Starwood. The Starwood was on Crescent Heights and Santa Monica Boulevard, and used to be like a Pioneer Chicken. It was a pretty ill place back then, it wasn't that bad, but a lot of stuff. I mean, fights out there and just and guys working on the street and things. It was crazy. That was pretty crazy down there back then. And we were just kids. We did so much stuff that I can't imagine if my kid was doing that stuff. I would be freaking out. And the stories even with Jim, forget about. Jim was the first person I ever saw dive off a stage at Santa Monica Civic. I think it was at Devo, and almost broke his back or something. Was that right? That was you? Yeah, that's skateboarders, man, had a lot of energy. It was but I can't say there's a favorite venue. I saw the Misfits play Madison Square Garden, which I always knew after seeing them at the Whiskey that they deserved to be on a big stage like that, and they killed it last week. They were so good there, I couldn't believe it. It was pretty cool. And Glenn had a voice. It was impressive. And any other important question that someone really wants to ask in front of all these other people, please ask it now. I'll go in the back. There's a counter back there, and I'll sign books. Okay, Dan.
I've always wanted to ask you this, man.
It's gonna be bad.
So since you were such a well-known photographer, I'm sure offers came your way to be a commercial photographer. What is the one job or the biggest job that you've probably maybe turned down just because you weren't feeling it? And why didn't you ever go into that, commercial mode?
I like making pictures of things that I like. And if someone asked me, the most commercial thing I did was shoot an album cover. I feel like, even nowadays when I get calls, every once in a while, even Eminem's management or some other young rapper's management, he's not young anymore, but people will call me to want to do a photo session or something. And, if I don't feel it, it just doesn't make sense. And also I feel like I've done to me personally, I've done a lot of what I really respect my own work. I really like what I've done, and I think I have a good body of work, and I don't want to water it down with some shit, or else bring someone up. I think that when I work with someone, and I hope at the risk of sounding conceited, I just don't want to give it that credibility if I don't believe in it, that I'm working on it, because I've really held on to this thing for a long time, I haven't had a show in New York in 25 years, more. Because it's just not the right venue and the right way I want it to be done. So what am I going to do? Okay, someone finally offered me to do this, and I'm just going to do it because I'm desperate. Thank goodness I'm not that desperate. And pretty soon I'll be able to, I'll be. What do they start? Social Security. So maybe if I can get there and still live the way I live, I'll be all right. Are we good here? Everyone's got their books or whatever they want, and hit up these Dogtown guys. Jim Muir is here, Peggy Oki's here, Jeff Ho is here. Who else is here? Cris
Dawson.
Cris Dawson is here, and Cris is the skating policeman in that book, but also was someone who, when I was young, one of my boards got stolen, and he was like a bigger guy, if you could imagine. He helped me get my board back. I think he was a real skating policeman that day. You guys have Dogtown books, please have them sign it.
My name is Jeff Ho. This is the new Dogtown book by Stecyk and Glen Friedman. Let's look at the book, man. It's much bigger. I'm stoked. I could look at this for days. It's so fucking cool. I love it.